There is a grammar unique to small towns. Not the words themselves, the silences between them. The way a sentence stops just before the part that matters. The way a question gets answered with a look rather than a response, and the look communicates something so complete that the room moves on as if the question had been answered satisfactorily. People who grow up in small towns learn this grammar before they learn to read. It becomes as natural as breathing. They stop hearing the silence as silence. They hear it as language. The people in these 8 accounts were not from the towns they entered. They heard the silence differently. A woman relocated from Seattle to a small town in rural Alabama for a teaching position and spent her first autumn noticing that the town's annual harvest celebration had an invitation list. Not a public list. A private one, consulted by the organizing committee with the practiced discretion of people who have been maintaining the same list for a long time. She asked to see it. The committee chair smiled at her and said, "You'll understand by next year." She was not in the town the following year. She left in February. She has never explained why February specifically, only that something happened in February that clarified her understanding of the list faster than autumn would have. A paramedic working a rural county in West Virginia began noticing in his 3rd year on the job that he had never run a call to one specific town in his coverage area. A town of 600 people in 3 years had generated 0 emergency medical calls. He raised it with his supervisor. His supervisor told him the town handled medical situations internally. He asked what that meant. His supervisor told him it meant he didn't need to worry about it. He worried about it for 4 more months before he drove into the town on his own time. And the last one. A woman in a small North Carolina town agreed to serve on the local historical preservation committee and was given access to the town's archive. In the archive she found a ledger from 1931 that documented, in plain administrative language, an arrangement the town had entered into that year with something the ledger referred to only as the interest. The ledger described the terms. It described the town's obligations. It described, in the final column of each entry, what the town received in return. The ledger had entries through the current year. In the same handwriting. 8 towns. 8 silences. 8 accounts from people who came in from outside and heard what the locals had long since stopped hearing. What follows is what the silence was covering. The teaching position in Aldervale, Alabama had been posted 3 times before Simone applied, which she would later understand was not because the position was undesirable but because it kept becoming vacant. She was 29, a 5th-grade teacher from Seattle making her first significant geographic move, drawn by the salary differential that rural Alabama offered relative to the Pacific Northwest and by the particular appeal of a fresh start in a place where no one knew her previous chapter. Aldervale had a population of 910, a consolidated school serving grades K through 8, a dollar store, 2 churches, and a diner. It had the surface of every small southern town she had ever driven through on a road trip and found charming in the abstracted way of a person who has never had to live in one. She arrived in August. The school year started well. Her colleagues were warm in the cautious way of a faculty that has seen new teachers come and stay and come and leave and has learned to keep a measured emotional distance until the pattern clarified. Her students were bright and contained and watchful in the way of children from families with long histories in a place. In September, she received an invitation in her school mailbox. A cream envelope, handwritten, her name on the front in a careful copper plate. Inside, an invitation to the Aldervale Harvest Celebration, first Saturday in October. Dinner, music, community gathering. The language was warm and inclusive and gave no indication that the invitation was anything other than a community welcome to a new resident. She asked her neighbor, a woman named Ruth, 50s, who had lived in Aldervale her whole life, about the celebration. Ruth's expression did the thing Simone would later come to recognize as the small-town grammar in action. A micro-adjustment, a fractional recalibration, not worry exactly but the specific face of a person deciding what portion of a thing to share. She said, "It's a good evening. The food is wonderful. You'll enjoy it." Simone asked who else was invited. Whether it was the whole town. Ruth said, "The committee sends invitations to certain people each year." Simone asked what the criteria were. Ruth looked at her with the same measured warmth she always presented. She said, "You'll understand it better after you've been here a little longer." Pause. "It's a real honor to be invited your first year. That doesn't always happen." The celebration was held on the first Saturday in October at the old Aldervale Agricultural Hall. A building at the town's edge that Simone had assumed from its architecture was used for storage. Inside, it was decorated with the genuine warmth of a community that knew how to make a space beautiful. Long tables, candles, real flowers, food that demonstrated the kind of cooking that exists only in communities where it has been practiced and refined and passed down for generations. Approximately 60 people were there. In a town of 910. She sat with two other new residents, a couple who had moved from Atlanta the previous spring, and with several long-term residents who treated the newcomers with a particular attentive hospitality, the kind that has an agenda beneath its warmth. Not malicious, purposeful. The hospitality of people who want newcomers to feel something specific and are skilled at producing it. After dinner there was a ceremony. She had not been told about a ceremony. It was introduced by the committee chair, a man named Gerald, 60s, the kind of man who has been in a position of quiet community authority for so long that the authority is invisible, as the celebration's traditional closing. A brief acknowledgement of the year's blessings and the community's commitments. He spoke for 10 minutes. She listened carefully. The words were the words of civic gratitude. The harvest, the community, the year's good fortune, the intention for the year to come. Normal words. But at the ceremony's end, every long-term resident in the room stood. All of them simultaneously without a cue she could identify. They stood and they faced the room's north wall and they were silent for exactly 60 seconds and then they sat back down. She looked at the Atlanta couple beside her. They had not stood. They looked at her. Gerald announced that the celebration was concluded and thanked everyone for attending. In the following weeks, Simone asked 3 different long-term residents about the standing. All 3 gave her the same response in closely similar language. It was a tradition of acknowledgement, of gratitude, of recognition for the blessings the community had received. She asked what they were acknowledging. What specific thing they were facing the north wall toward. All 3 told her she would understand by next year. In February she found something in her classroom. In the coat closet, behind the supply shelves, in a space she had not previously accessed. A bundle of items, small, personal items, the kind that accumulate in a child's life. Items she recognized as belonging to 2 of her students. Bundled and placed in that space with the deliberate care of something prepared rather than stored. With a small card attached, handwritten, that listed the items and beside each item a notation she did not understand. She took the bundle to the principal. The principal, a man who had been at the school for 23 years, looked at it for a long time. He looked at her. He said, "Where did you find this?" She told him. He put the bundle in his desk drawer. He told her he would handle it. He told her she had done the right thing bringing it to him. His tone was the tone of a person managing a situation, not investigating one. She drove to the county sheriff's office the following morning. She described what she had found. The sheriff listened. He asked her whether the principal had responded. She said yes. He said, "Then it's being handled." He said it with the flat finality of a door being closed. She resigned her position on a Thursday. She was in her car and out of Aldervale by Saturday morning. She has thought about the standing at the harvest celebration, about the north wall, about what is north of the agricultural hall at the town's edge, across the field that begins where the hall's parking lot ends, that 60 people would stand and face in 60 seconds of simultaneous silence. She drove that road on her way out of town. She looked north across the field. There is a tree line. And within the tree line, visible from the road in February when the canopy was down, a structure. Not a building, a structure. Something built, something with intentionality, but nothing she had a name for. She did not stop. She drove out of Aldervale and she did not look in the rearview mirror, and she has not gone back. She thinks about the bundle in the closet, about the notation beside each item, about two of her students whose belongings had been placed in that closet in that bundle in that particular way, and what the ceremony at the harvest celebration had to do with it, and what the Northfield structure had to do with it, and what the committee decided each year when it sat down with its invitation list. She has not been able to stop thinking about it. She probably never will. The town of Bray's Hollow, West Virginia had 611 residents. One medical clinic opened 3 days a week, and in the 3 years that paramedic Daniel worked the county, it had generated precisely 0 emergency calls. Daniel was 35, a 10-year EMS veteran who had worked urban and rural assignments and who had the calibrated professional sensibility of someone who knows what a normal call volume looks like across population densities and settlement types. A town of 600, in his experience and his training data, generated an average of between 4 and 8 emergency calls per month. Cardiac events, accidents, falls in the elderly population, the ordinary medical emergencies of human life in a community. Bray's Hollow had generated none. He raised it with his supervisor, Mike, in a routine staffing review in his 3rd year. He had the data, 3 years of call logs, organized by originating address in town. Bray's Hollow, a blank column. Mike looked at the data. He said, "They handle medical situations internally." Daniel asked what that meant. Mike said, "They have their own resources. They don't call us." Daniel asked what resources a town of 600 had that would make emergency medical services unnecessary for 3 full years. Mike said, "I don't know the details. I know we don't run calls there." He paused. "Leave it, Daniel." He left it for 4 more months. The blank column accumulated. In month 4 of leaving it, he drove into Bray's Hollow on a Sunday afternoon on his own time. The town was physically unremarkable, a main street of the kind that every small Appalachian town has: a post office, a general store, a church. He drove its full extent in 6 minutes. He stopped at the general store and bought a coffee and looked around. The store was staffed by a woman of about 60 named Pearl, who received him with the normal reserve of a small-town business owner who doesn't recognize a face. He introduced himself as a county paramedic. He told her he had noticed Bray's Hollow didn't call for emergency services and asked if there was a community resource he should know about. Pearl looked at him for a long moment. She said, "We manage our own health." He asked how. She said, "We always have." He asked who the town's medical provider was. A doctor, a nurse practitioner, someone with medical credentials. She said, "We have people who know what to do." He asked what happened in a cardiac arrest. Whether the town had a defibrillator, whether someone was trained in ACLS, what the protocol was for a time-critical emergency. Pearl refilled his coffee without being asked, and she said, "We haven't had a cardiac arrest in Bray's Hollow in 30 years. He sat with that for a moment. He said, "No cardiac events in 30 years? She said, "Not one." He asked about strokes, about accidents, about any of the categories of emergency that a community accumulates over 30 years. She said, "We're a healthy community." He drove out of Bray's Hollow and went home and spent the evening with county vital records accessible through his EMS account. He pulled death records for Bray's Hollow going back 30 years. The death records existed. Bray's Hollow was not immortal. People died. The rate was lower than comparable communities, but it was not zero. The cause of death column was the thing that stopped him. Across 30 years of Bray's Hollow death records, the cause of death was recorded in every single entry as natural causes. Not specific natural causes. Not cardiac arrest, not respiratory failure, not the named mechanisms that natural causes comprises. Just the phrase repeated in every entry for 30 years. County death records required a certifying physician's signature. Every Bray's Hollow entry was signed by the same physician. A name he didn't recognize. A physician whose license when he checked the state medical board was valid. Whose address of record was in Bray's Hollow. A physician whose medical school graduation year visible in the license record meant they were currently 103 years old. He took this to the county health department, not to Mike. The health department official he spoke to, a woman who managed the county's public health compliance, looked at the records he presented with the expression of someone who has seen these before. She said, "Bray's Hollow manages its own health affairs. The county has historically respected that." He asked when the county had decided to respect it. Who had made that decision and on what authority? She looked at him steadily. She said, "That decision was made before I was in this position. And before my predecessor. It has been the county's position for a very long time." She paused. "I would encourage you to continue not running calls to Bray's Hollow, Daniel. That's the best advice I have." He accepted the advice. He has continued not running calls to Bray's Hollow. He has not returned there on his own time. He has thought about what a community that doesn't have cardiac arrests, that doesn't have strokes or accidents or time-critical emergencies, that has the same certifying physician for 30 years without the physician aging, has done to produce that condition. He has thought about the cost of that condition. What you give up or give over to live in a place where the ordinary medical emergencies of human life do not occur. He has thought about Pearl's tone when she said it. Not boastful. Not suspicious. The flat, matter-of-fact tone of someone describing a thing that simply is. We're a healthy community. He believes her. He is not sure health is the right word for it. The Historical Preservation Committee in Ware's Landing, North Carolina met on the second Tuesday of each month in the back room of the town hall, and Maggie had been a member for 7 months before she was given access to the archive. She was 43, a retired accountant who had moved with her husband to Ware's Landing for his work and who had joined the committee out of the particular restlessness of an organized, detail-oriented person with time on their hands. She was good at the work. Cataloging, digitization, the preservation of physical documents against the deterioration of time and humidity and institutional neglect. The committee chair, a man named Prescott, had told her on her third meeting that she was the most useful addition to the committee in years. The archive was in the town hall basement. She had not been taken there in her first 7 months. The committee's above-ground work had been sufficient, and she had not pressed. When Prescott finally took her down in March, he did it with the ease of a person performing an ordinary task, not the weight of someone granting significant access. He showed her the organizational system, identified the materials most in need of attention, and left her to work. The archive was extensive and well organized. She worked through it systematically, the way her accounting background had trained her to approach any large body of records, from the oldest materials forward, building context before detail. Colonial-era land grants, incorporation documents, a continuous run of town meeting minutes from 1847 forward. In a flat archival box labeled simply 1931, Administrative, she found the ledger. It was a standard accounting ledger of its era, cloth cover, column-ruled pages, the kind used for business records throughout the first half of the 20th century. The spine label read, Town Account, the interest, EST 1931. She opened it. The first page was a preamble, handwritten in the formal language of a business agreement. The parties, the terms, the duration, the obligations of each party. One party was the town of Ware's Landing, represented by the mayor and selectmen of 1931, whose names were listed. The other party was referred to throughout as the interest without further identification or description. The town's obligations, as described in the preamble, were specific and enumerated. She read them twice. They involved the maintenance of a specific parcel of land at the town's northern boundary. The parcel's dimensions were given. The obligations included regular maintenance of the parcel in a specific condition, the performance of a specific acknowledgement at specific intervals, and the restriction of access to the parcel to authorized persons only. What the town received in return was described in the ledger's column headings: date, request, granted, notation. She turned pages. The requests in the column labeled as such were the requests of the town or of individual residents, submitted through the town's administration. Requests for specific outcomes: a drought to end, a business to succeed, a person to recover from illness, a competing interest to fail. The small, urgent desires of a community managing its own fate. The granted column contained, for the overwhelming majority of entries across 90 years of pages, a single word: yes. The notation column contains supplementary information: terms, conditions, the specific mechanism by which the request had been fulfilled. She read these with the accountant's attention to detail that had made her valuable to the committee. Some notations were brief and unremarkable. Some were not. She turned to the most recent entries. The ledger's final pages. The handwriting on the recent pages was the same as the handwriting on the first page. Not similar, the same. 92 years of entries in a single consistent hand. The most recent entry was dated 6 weeks ago. The request was from a named individual, a name she recognized as a current Ware's Landing resident. The request was for a specific personal outcome that she would not repeat. The granted column said yes. The notation column described the terms. And then, in a column she had not noticed because it appeared only in entries from the last 20 years, a final notation. A column with no header, positioned at the page's far right margin. In most entries it was blank. In this entry it was not blank. It contained her name, her full name, and beside her name a date. The date was 6 days in the future. She closed the ledger. She replaced it in the box. She went upstairs. Prescott was in the hall. He looked at her expression, and his own expression did something small and involuntary, not guilt, not alarm, but the specific micro-shift of someone who has been waiting for a particular moment to arrive and has just seen it. He said, "You found the account ledger." She said yes. He said, "I want you to know that your being here, your work on the committee, has been genuinely valued." He said it with care. With the specific tone of a person who means something precisely and wants to be understood precisely. She asked about the date beside her name. He said, "That's the date. We'll sit down with you and explain the committee's relationship with the account. How it works. What the town's obligations actually involve in practice." He paused. "Not everything is what it looks like on the page." She asked if she could decline the meeting. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You could. But you'd find it harder to be in Ware's Landing afterward. Not because of anything we do. Just because of what you know and what you'd be choosing to do with it." She attended the meeting 6 days later. She has not described its contents to anyone. She is still on the preservation committee. She is still in Ware's Landing. She responds to messages from friends and family with the normal frequency and the normal warmth of a person who is fine. She sounds fine. She has not returned to the archive since the meeting. She told the one friend she has confided in, partially in terms that gestured at the situation without detailing it, that the meeting clarified the ledger in ways she had not expected. Her friend asked if she was all right. She said, "The town takes good care of its people." She said it with a warmth that her friend described as slightly unfamiliar, slightly practiced, as if she had heard someone else say it first and was now saying it herself. The town of Sable, Idaho was 47 miles from the nearest city and had been a farming community for 130 years. It had 382 residents, a grain elevator, a school, and a thing that nobody talked about but that every child who grew up there carried with them for the rest of their lives. Karen was 38, a child psychologist who had relocated to the region to work with rural school systems across a 3-county area. She visited Sable School in October as part of a district-wide mental health assessment, a routine evaluation of student well-being and the school's support infrastructure. The school served 81 students in grades K through 8. The principal was cooperative and the teachers were professional, and the students, in Karen's initial observations, seemed healthy and engaged and unremarkable. On her second day, during free draw assessments, a standard tool in child psychology, asking children to draw whatever they wanted and using the results as a window into their inner landscape, she collected the work of all 81 students and spent her lunch hour reviewing it. 67 of the 81 drawings contain the same image. Not similar images. The same image, produced independently by 67 children ranging in age from 5 to 13. With a variation in technical skill that age range produces, but with a consistency of subject that eliminated coincidence as a category. A figure at the edge of a field. Tall, proportionally elongated, standing at the boundary between an open space and a tree line, facing toward the viewer. Always at dusk. The children used similar color choices for the sky regardless of their individual palettes. The specific amber gray of a sky after the sun has gone but before full dark has arrived. The younger children drew it with the directness of children who have not yet learned to aestheticize what they experience. The older ones drew it with more detail, more shadow, more of the self-conscious craft of a child who has been thinking about something long enough to have developed a visual language for it. The same figure. At the field's edge. At dusk. Watching. Pause. She asked the third-grade teacher, a woman named Sandra who had grown up in Sable and returned to teach there, about the drawing themes. She framed it as a general inquiry. She had noticed some similar imagery across the age groups and was curious whether there was a local landmark or cultural reference that might explain it. Sandra looked at the drawings Karen showed her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We don't really discuss that with the children." Karen asked what the image represented. Sandra said, "It's just something the kids see sometimes. At dusk. At the field edge." She said it with the flat acceptance of a person describing the weather. Most of them stop seeing it by the time they're in high school. Karen asked what it was. Sandra said, "No one's ever gotten close enough to say." Karen asked whether any adult in Sable had seen it. Sandra said, "Yes. Most of us have, growing up. You stop seeing it as you get older. Or it stops showing itself to you. One of those." She paused. She looked at the drawings with an expression Karen later described as not frightened and not dismissive but something older than both. The expression of someone for whom a thing has been real for so long that the emotional vocabulary for it has been entirely replaced by acceptance. She said, "It doesn't do anything. It just watches. From the field edge at dusk. The children notice it more than adults." Children are better at noticing things that are simply present without purpose. Karen asked the school principal whether there was any documentation of the imagery, whether previous mental health assessors had noted it, whether the school had records of children reporting the figure. The principal said, "We don't document it." Karen asked why. He said, "Because it's not a problem. It's a presence. Documenting a presence creates a file, and a file creates attention, and attention creates the impression that something needs to be solved." He looked at her steadily. Some things don't need to be solved. Some things need to be let alone. She submitted her district assessment. She noted the drawing patterns without specifying the subject matter. She recommended continued mental health support. She has the drawings, all 67, in a folder in her office. She has shown them to one colleague, a researcher in developmental psychology, who examined them for an hour in silence and then asked Karen if she had ever been to Sable at dusk. Karen said no. Her colleague said, "Don't." She said it with the professional restraint of someone who has an opinion they are choosing not to elaborate. Karen has respected this advice. She has not returned to Sable at dusk. She looks at the drawings sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. She has thought about what Sandra said. It stops showing itself to you. The passive construction, not you stop noticing it but it stops showing itself. The implication of a decision on the figure's part. The implication of a figure that is capable of deciding what it wants to be visible to. And the secondary implication, that the children it shows itself to are not frightened. That 67 children drew a figure watching them from a field edge and none of their drawings had the emotional register of fear. They had the emotional register of familiarity. As if the figure at the dusk field edge was simply part of growing up in Sable, Idaho. As ordinary and as unquestioned as the grain elevator and the school and the amber gray of the sky when the sun has gone but full dark hasn't arrived. As if it had been there long enough that the children had simply stopped finding it strange. The town of Kellam's Ford, Missouri had a dead end. Not a road that ended at a cul-de-sac or a property boundary. A road that had been officially closed and barricaded at its eastern terminus in 1977 and that had remained barricaded since for 47 years, with no public explanation, no county maintenance designation, and no answer from the Kellam's Ford Town Administration to any inquiry about it that had ever satisfied the inquirer. Todd was 32, a civil engineer working for a regional infrastructure consulting firm contracted to assess road conditions across several rural Missouri counties. He came to Kellam's Ford in May with a list of every county road in the municipality and a mandate to assess each one for maintenance needs, safety compliance, and classification accuracy. Barricaded Road 7, that was its designation in the county system, the number corresponding to its survey order and the modifier reflecting its official status, was on his list. Officially closed roads still required periodic inspection. He drove to its western entry on a Tuesday morning. The barricade was old, the wooden sawhorse type that had been standard in the 1970s, weathered to the gray of driftwood but intact and clearly maintained. No rot, the reflective tape replaced at some point in the not-too-distant past, the paint on the closed designation legible. Someone had been keeping the barricade functional. He walked the road beyond it. His mandate included physical inspection of closed roads for structural integrity and potential closure justifications. He had walked closed roads before. Barricaded Road 7 was a county road of standard construction. Gravel surface, maintained drainage ditches on both sides, the infrastructure of a road that had been built to serve something and had been serving it until 1977. The road ran east for approximately a mile before disappearing around a gradual curve. He walked to the curve. Beyond the curve the road ended. Not at a barrier or a property line. It ended in the specific way that roads end when the terrain they were built to cross no longer exists. The surface stopping cleanly at a point where the road's continuation would have required ground that wasn't there. A drop, he estimated, from the edge of 15 to 20 feet, into a depression in the landscape that the road had apparently once crossed via a bridge or culvert. The bridge or culvert was gone. The depression was overgrown. Decades of growth, the kind of ecological reclamation that 15 to 20 feet of cleared ground produces when left alone for half a century. On the far side of the depression, the road continued. He could see it. The gravel surface, the drainage ditches, the maintained corridor of a county road, extending east from the far edge of the depression toward whatever it had been built to serve. The road on the far side of the depression was maintained. He spent the afternoon with satellite imagery in his truck. The imagery confirmed what his eyes had told him. Barricaded Road 7 crossed the depression, which appeared in the imagery as a sinkhole or subsidence event of significant age, on both sides. The western portion running from the main county road to the depression's edge. The eastern portion running from the depression's far edge to a terminus he could not see clearly in the available imagery. The tree canopy was dense at that end. He went to the Kellam's Ford town clerk's office. He asked about Barricaded Road 7. Specifically about the eastern portion, which was maintained but inaccessible from the western entry and which did not appear in any of his county records as actively maintained. The town clerk, a woman of about 60, efficient, direct, looked at him with the specific attentiveness of someone who has been asked this question before. She said, "Road 7 has been closed since 1977. He said, "The eastern portion appears maintained. Someone is keeping the drainage ditches clear and the surface graded. Who maintains it?" She said, "I don't have information about maintenance on a closed road." He asked who authorized the maintenance. She said, "I don't have information about that." He asked what was at the eastern terminus, what the road had been built to serve, what structure or property it led to. She said, "The road was closed in 1977. Whatever it served prior to that is historical." He pressed once more. He asked whether the town had any records of what the eastern portion currently served, whether there was property beyond the maintained section, whether any residents accessed it. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said with the patient finality of someone who has prepared this sentence, "The road is closed. The county records reflect that. Anything beyond the barricade is not accessible to the public and is not the county's operational concern." He filed his assessment. He noted the barricade as maintained and the road as appropriately classified. He noted the eastern portion anomaly in his personal file and not in the submitted report, because the submitted report was a county document and he had been given a clear message about what the county considered its operational concern. He has searched available records for what Barricaded Road 7 was built to serve. He has found a reference in a 1971 county survey that lists the road's destination as Kellam Station, private residential, Kellam family. He has searched for the Kellam family in local records and found them going back to the town's founding in 1843. The family appears consistently in records through 1977. After 1977, no record. The eastern portion of the road leads, as far as he can determine from available mapping data, to approximately 40 acres of land at the county's eastern boundary. The land is not listed in any property tax record. It is not listed in any deed record he has been able to access. It appears on available county maps as a blank. 40 acres in a county where every other parcel is documented, owned, and taxed. 40 acres on the other side of a maintained road that no county record acknowledges. He has thought about who maintains the road. About the fresh reflective tape on the barricade replaced by someone for some purpose. About what purpose a maintained barricade serves if the road is genuinely closed and the eastern portion is genuinely unoccupied. He has decided that a maintained barricade is for keeping people out, and that keeping people out implies something on the other side that has an interest in the barricade's function. He has not gone back to walk the eastern portion. He has not yet decided whether he will. The town of Culver Springs, Georgia held a town meeting every first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. in the municipal building's main chamber, and they had done so, according to their records, without interruption since 1889. Elena was 35, an investigative journalist who had been contracted to write a long-form piece on rural civic engagement for a national magazine. A story about the communities that maintained participatory governance structures despite the general decline of civic participation across the country. Culver Springs, with its unbroken meeting record, was one of 5 towns on her list. She attended the January meeting. It was orderly and well attended. Approximately 120 people in a chamber that seated 150, which represented, she noted, an extraordinary participation rate for a town of 500. The agenda covered road maintenance, a zoning request, a school budget proposal. Standard municipal business conducted with the practiced efficiency of a community that has been doing this for a long time. At the meeting's end, after the formal agenda was concluded, the town manager, a man named Frederick, 50s, with the bearing of someone who has been running meetings for decades, said, "We'll now proceed to the standing item." The room's tone shifted. She noticed it physically, the specific quality of attention in 120 people changing simultaneously, the way a room sounds different when everyone in it focuses on the same thing at the same moment. Frederick consulted a sheet of paper. He read 4 names. He said, "These residents are identified for the monthly review. The board will conduct assessments this week. Residents with relevant information are asked to submit it through the usual channel by Friday." He looked up. "We thank these residents for their service to the community's health." He closed the meeting. She asked the woman beside her, a retired schoolteacher named Ware, 70s, who had attended these meetings for 40 years, what the standing item was, what the monthly review was, what the assessment process involved. Ware said, "It's a health check. The board makes sure everyone in town is doing well." Elena asked why specific residents were named, whether the review was opt-in or assigned. Ware said, "It rotates. Everyone goes through it eventually." Elena asked what the assessment involved, what the board assessed. Ware looked at her with the warmth and the opacity that she had been encountering since her first conversation in Culver Springs, the specific combination of genuine friendliness and genuine inaccessibility that small towns develop around the things they protect. She said, "It's just a check-in, making sure people have what they need. It's one of the things that makes Culver Springs what it is." Elena filed a public records request the following morning for documentation of the monthly review process, its history, its procedures, its records. She was told by the town clerk that the standing item was not a formal municipal function and therefore not subject to public records requirements. She asked what it was if not a formal municipal function. The clerk said, "A community tradition." She spoke to one of the 4 named residents, a man named Albert, late 40s, who she found at his hardware store the following afternoon. She told him he had been named at the meeting and asked if he would describe the review process. Albert was quiet for a long time. He was a large, comfortable man who ran his store with the unhurried confidence of someone whose place in a community is settled and secure. He looked at her. He said, "I've been through it 6 or 7 times. It's not something to worry about." She asked what it involved. He said, "A couple of members of the board come by. They talk to you. They ask about your life, what's going on, whether you're." He paused, choosing words. whether you're aligned with the community's direction, whether you have any needs that aren't being met, whether you have anything to report. Elena asked what aligned with the community's direction meant. Albert said, whether you're happy here, whether you're planning to stay, whether anything is troubling you. He paused. They're looking for discontent. That's the honest answer. People who are unhappy or who are thinking about leaving or who are... He stopped. She asked, or who are what? He looked at her. He said, or who are asking questions that the community would prefer stayed internal. He said it without accusation, without hostility, with the flat, matter-of-fact delivery of a man providing information. He said, your name will probably come up at next month's meeting. She asked what happened to people who failed the review, who were identified as discontent or misaligned. Albert said they usually decide to move on. People find that when the community's attention is on them in that way, they become uncomfortable. They find reasons to leave. She asked if they left voluntarily. He held her gaze. He said, as far as anyone can tell. She left Culver Springs that afternoon. Her long-form piece on rural civic engagement is published. Culver Springs is not in it. She drove out of town thinking about the 4 names Frederick had read from his sheet. About Albert, who had been through the review 6 or 7 times, who knew the language of it, who was still in Culver Springs and had been through it 6 or 7 times. Who knew what it meant to fail and was still there. Which meant he had never failed. Which meant that whatever the board was looking for when they came to your house and sat with you and looked at you, Albert, 6 or 7 times, had been able to produce the thing they needed to see. She has found herself, in the months since, wondering what that thing looks like. What it costs to produce it. And whether producing it repeatedly changes you in ways you can't reverse. The drought that ended in Pelham's Cross, Virginia in the summer of 1953 had been going on for 3 years and had brought the farming community to the edge of dissolution when it broke overnight on a Tuesday in August with 11 inches of rain in 8 hours. This was not the disturbing part. Droughts break. Rain arrives. Communities survive. What Lori found disturbing when she came to Pelham's Cross in her capacity as a documentary filmmaker researching southern agricultural communities was what the town had done in the 3 days before the rain came. Lori was 41, working on a film about the relationship between rural communities and climatic crisis. She was not looking for the supernatural. She was looking for the human, the social, economic, and cultural responses of communities under pressure. She had been given access to Pelham's Cross's historical archive by the town's Heritage Society as part of her research process. The archive contained a remarkable run of local newspapers, the Pelham's Cross Courier, weekly, unbroken since 1901. She read the 1953 issues looking for coverage of the drought. The issues through July 1953 covered the drought with the measured, pragmatic reporting of a small-town paper in genuine crisis. Crop failures, financial hardship, families leaving, the particular gravity of a community watching itself diminish. The August 5, 1953 issue, the last before the rain, covered a town meeting held on August 3. She read it twice. The meeting had been called by the town selectmen to discuss what the paper described as the traditional remedy. The discussion, as reported, was substantive and contested. Some residents had argued against it, citing changes in their understanding of what was right and what the community should be willing to do. Others had argued that the tradition existed for exactly this kind of emergency and that the community's survival required it. The vote was described as 23 in favor and 9 opposed. What the traditional remedy was, the August 5 issue did not describe. It referred to it by that phrase throughout, as if the readership knew what it meant and needed no elaboration. The August 12 issue reported the rain, the community's relief, and a brief social notice. A memorial for a resident named Charles Fenn, 44, farmer, who had died on August 4th. The cause of death was listed as sudden illness. The memorial was brief by the standards of the paper's usual treatment of resident deaths. No testimonials, no biographical detail, no list of surviving family. She searched the archive for every instance of the phrase traditional remedy. She found 6. 1921, 1931, 1938, 1953, 1967, 1978. Each one preceded by a period of community crisis. Drought, economic depression, a crop disease outbreak, the collapse of a major employer. Each one followed by resolution of the crisis and by a brief, unelaborated memorial notice for a resident who had died of sudden illness in the days following the vote. 6 crises. 6 votes. 6 memorial notices. She went to the Heritage Society. She asked the society's director, a man named Howard, 60s, who had assembled the archive she was working from, about Charles Fenn and about the traditional remedy. Howard listened to her questions with the expression she had by then learned to read, the specific quality of a Pelham's Cross resident encountering a question they had been expecting and had prepared for. He said, "Charles Fenn was a good man. He's remembered well in this town." She asked what the traditional remedy was. He said, "It's a phrase from an older vocabulary. It meant the community pulling together, taking collective action in a time of crisis." She asked what collective action had been taken on August 4, 1953. He said, "I don't have specific records of every community action in 1953. She asked about the other 5 instances, whether the same phrase described the same type of action in each case, whether the memorial notice in each case was connected to the vote that preceded it. Howard looked at her for a long time. He said, "Lori, I've enjoyed working with you on this project. Your film sounds like something the community would be proud to be part of." He paused. "I want to keep it that way. I want you to go away from here with a film that tells the story you came to tell." She asked if that story would require her to not ask about Charles Fenn. He said, "It would require you to focus on the stories that Pelham's Cross is comfortable sharing." She asked if there were community members who would share the other story. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There were 9 people who voted no in 1953. Their children and grandchildren are still in this town. Some of them might talk to you." He paused. "I would ask you, for your own sake, to think carefully about whether you want what they'd tell you." She completed her documentary. Pelham's Cross is in it. The drought of 1953 is in it. The community's resilience and its recovery are in it. Charles Fenn is not in it. She knows what the traditional remedy was. She found a no-voter's granddaughter who told her, in a single conversation that Lori recorded and has not shared publicly. She knows what the vote was for and what August 4th involved and why Charles Fenn's memorial notice was brief. She has made a decision about the recording that she revisits periodically. So far the decision has always been, not yet. She does not know if it will ever be yes. She does know that Pelham's Cross has not had a significant agricultural crisis since 1978. She does not know if this is relevant. She thinks about it anyway. The last account is the one that the opening of this script was built toward, and I want to give it the space it deserves. A woman named Frances came to the town of Aldgate, North Carolina as the newly appointed director of the town's Historical Preservation Committee. She was 52, a retired county administrator with a talent for organization and a genuine love of local history, and she came to Aldgate in September with the specific quiet enthusiasm of a person who has found exactly the right thing to do with the next chapter of their life. Aldgate had 800 residents, a history going back to the early 18th century, and an archive that the previous director had described, in his handover notes, as extensive and well organized, with some materials requiring specialized attention. Frances had read this as bureaucratic understatement for a backlog of digitization work. She found in her first week that the archive was indeed extensive, organized, and largely in order. She also found on a shelf in the archive's secondary room behind a row of municipal binders 7 volumes of a ledger whose spine label read, Town Account, the Interest, IST 1743. She opened the first volume. The preamble described an agreement between the town of Aldgate, represented by its founding selectmen, and a party referred to as the Interest. The terms described the town's obligations, the maintenance of a parcel at the town's northern boundary, a regular acknowledgement, a restriction of access, and the town's consideration, assistance, favor, and protection as specifically requested and approved. She turned to the most recent volume. She turned to the most recent entries. The date column showed entries through the current month. The handwriting was consistent across 280 years of entries. She read the request and granted columns for the most recent entries with the systematic attention of a woman who had spent a career processing administrative records. The requests were the requests of a community managing its own fate. Outcomes desired, difficulties resolved, competition removed. The granted column returned for the vast majority a single word: yes. She turned to the most recent entry. In the column at the far right margin, a column without a header, her name was written. With a date. The date was 3 days away. She recognized as she looked at it that she had seen this format before. She had no memory of when or where. She had no memory of seeing this ledger before this moment. She was certain she had not accessed this archive previously. And yet, she sat with the ledger and the specific, disorienting quality of her certainty and her uncertainty occupying the same moment, and she tried to trace the feeling to its source. She went home. She sat at her kitchen table and she tried to remember the months before she had applied for the Aldgate position. She had seen the posting in July. She had applied in August. The process had been smooth. One interview, a quick decision, an offer she had not hesitated to accept. She tried to remember who had told her about the position, how she had learned it existed. She could not remember. She could not find the origin of the information. She had applied. The application existed, she had the email record. But the moment before the application, the moment when she had decided to apply, the source of the information that had led her to Aldgate, that moment was not in her memory. It was simply missing. She called her daughter that evening. She asked, carefully and without explaining why, whether her daughter remembered how she had learned about the Aldgate position. Her daughter said, "You said a colleague mentioned it." Frances asked which colleague. Her daughter said she didn't know. She said her mother had said a colleague and she hadn't asked for more detail. Frances searched her email for any mention of Aldgate prior to her application. She found nothing. No colleague email. No job board notification. No forwarded listing. She had applied for a position she could not find evidence of having learned about. She went back to the archive the following morning. She pulled the volume for the decade of her birth year and paged forward. She was looking for her name. She found it. In the far right margin column with no header, in an entry dated 11 years ago, her name. And beside her name, an annotation she had to read 3 times before she could hold its meaning. Directed to position upon creation of vacancy. Timeline, 10 years. The vacancy had been created 11 years ago, when the previous director, a healthy man in his mid-60s, had abruptly retired. She found his entry in the same column. His name with the annotation retired, position available for successor. She had been directed toward this position a decade before it was offered to her. The Interest had arranged it. She closed the ledger. She sat in the archive's secondary room and she held what she knew. A 280-year-old agreement had, at some point in her life, long before she had come to Aldgate, long before she had known Aldgate existed, determined that she was a suitable candidate for the role of Historical Preservation Director, had created the conditions for her arrival, had guided her, through whatever mechanism it used, toward a town and a committee and an archive and a ledger that described, in administrative language, the totality of what she had walked into. She had been chosen. Not recently. A decade ago at minimum. Perhaps longer. She thought about the date in the most recent entry, 3 days away. The date of her meeting with Prescott and the committee board. She thought about what the meeting would involve. What it would ask of her. What it would offer. She thought about the entries in the granted column. The requests and their outcomes. 280 years of a community that had, in exchange for certain obligations and certain acknowledgments, been protected and favored and assisted in the specific, intimate ways that a community most needs. She thought about what she had spent her career doing. Administration. Records management. The organized, careful maintenance of a community's documentary history. She thought about the ledger's consistent handwriting across 280 years. She thought about what it would mean to be the person who maintained that ledger. She attended the meeting on the third day. She met with Prescott and 4 board members in the town hall's back room. They received her with the warm, attentive hospitality that she now understood was not incidental but structural. The hospitality of people welcoming someone they have been expecting for a long time. Prescott told her the town's history with the interest. He told her it without evasion or euphemism, in the plain administrative language of someone who has been managing an institutional relationship for years. He told her what the obligations involved, what the acknowledgement required, what access to the northern parcel entailed. He told her what the position of director involved beyond the preservation work. The actual work. The maintenance of the account. The ledger. He asked her if she had questions. She asked one. She asked if she had ever had a choice. Prescott considered this. He said, "Everyone who has held this position has chosen to hold it. We don't compel anyone." He paused. "But the interest has always known, long before we have, who will choose yes. It has a very long record of being right about that." She asked if she could have said no. He said you could have. You could leave right now. The door is open. He said it with the specific quality of an offer that is genuine but that both parties understand has a particular character. But you know what you know now. And the kind of person who comes into this room and asks the questions you've asked is the kind of person who finds that knowledge requires a response. Who finds that walking away from what they know is harder than staying with it. She looked at the door. She looked at Prescott. She said, "Show me the ledger." She has been the Aldgate Historical Preservation Director for 3 years now. She is good at the work. The community is well managed. The archive is in the best condition it has been in decades. The ledger's most recent entries are in her handwriting. She has not described the arrangement to anyone outside Aldgate. She has not described the northern parcel or what the acknowledgement involves or the specific terms of a 280-year-old agreement that is, by any measure she can apply, still in active force. She told me one thing. Not in a conversation. In a letter she sent to a contact of mine who had heard about her research interests and reached out. A handwritten letter, brief, ending with a single paragraph that I will share without editing. She wrote, "I have spent 3 years maintaining a record of what this town has given and what it has received in return. I have read every entry going back to 1743. The thing I can tell you, which costs me nothing to share because it changes nothing about what you would do with it, is this. The interest has never taken anything from Aldgate that Aldgate did not offer. Not once in 280 years. Every entry in the consideration column represents a willing transaction. I have had cause to consider what this says about the nature of the arrangement, and about the nature of the people who have maintained it across 12 generations. I have not arrived at a conclusion I am comfortable writing down, but I think about it every time I open the ledger. And I think the ledger is the point. The record is the point. Whatever the interest is, it wants to be witnessed. It wants someone to sit with the full account and understand the totality of what has passed between it and this town. That is what this position is for. Not administration. Testimony. I am a witness. I'm not sure to what. But I think the what is very old and very patient and entirely aware that I am writing this letter. It probably already knows what you'll do with it. 8 towns. 8 silences. 8 communities that organized themselves around something they had collectively decided not to speak aloud to the outside world. A harvest committee with a list and a north field, and an annual ceremony of acknowledgement. A town where nobody calls emergency services because something older than emergency services manages the community's health. A librarian who keeps a ledger of every person who enters her archive and what becomes of them. A road that leads to 40 acres that no county record acknowledges. A monthly meeting where names are read and assessments conducted and the discontent are invited to find themselves somewhere else. A documentary about drought that has a room at its center that the filmmaker has chosen not to open. A child psychologist with 67 drawings of the same figure watching from the same field edge at the same dusk light. And a preservation director who maintains a 280-year-old account in consistent handwriting, as a witness to something ancient that wants, for reasons no one has been able to determine, to be witnessed. What the journalist found in Millhaven, the word handle and everything it contained, is the surface level. The word for the most mechanical version of what small towns do with their truths. The deeper version is what Francis described. Not force. Not compulsion. A long, patient, accurate assessment of who will say yes. Who will find the knowledge harder to leave than to stay with. Who will sit down with the ledger and become, in the sitting, the next keeper of what it holds. The small towns in these accounts are still there. Their populations are stable. Their civic functions continue. Their archives are organized. Their fields produce. Their nights are managed. They know things they don't talk about. And the reason they don't talk about it is not fear, and it is not shame, and it is not the ordinary discretion of a community protecting its own. It is something older than any of those. It is the knowledge, accumulated across generations and written down in ledgers and passed from hand to hand without ever being spoken in the open air, that some arrangements are only as strong as the silence that holds them. And the silence has been holding for a very long time. If this unsettled you, you're not alone.